Al Jazeera podcasts.
Today, an assassination that could reshape the Middle East.
The Islamic resistance will continue to confront the Israeli enemy, supporting Gaza and Palestine, defending Lebanon and its people, and responding to murders and the killing of civilians.
What does the killing of Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah mean for the future of the region? I'm Malika Bilal, and this is The Take.
Many describe this as an earthquake, not only in Lebanon, but for the whole region, because it will have its own impact on the politics and also in the middle of the war, on how this war is going to end.
Ali Hashem is one of Al Jazeera's correspondents in Lebanon. He spoke to us on a busy day in between doing live reports on Al Jazeera. Hezbollah issued its first response since the killing of its leader in a televised speech on Monday. Ali says the group's deputy secretary general, Naim Qassem, tried to reassure supporters
that despite the big loss, but the structure of the group hasn't changed, and that as soon as possible, the group is going to elect a new leader. Also, he spoke about the command and control, especially in the south, where the war is raging between Hezbollah and Israel. He said that Hezbollah is still capable of launching rockets and, in case of an Israeli incursion, of resisting and engaging with the attacking forces.
Ali tells us that the balance of power between Iran's allies and Israel has shifted, with Israel now holding the upper hand. Here's Israel's defense minister, Yoav Gallant.
The next stage in the war against Hezbollah will begin soon. It will be a significant factor in changing the security situation and will allow us to complete the important part of the war's goals, returning the residents to their homes. This we will do. As I said here a month ago, that we will shift the center of gravity, so I say now, we will change the situation and will bring the residents back home, whatever effort it requires.
The big question right now, what's next? Is this war going to continue? And what are going to be the ceilings? This is one of the issues that many are anticipating and thinking of, given the fact that Prime Minister Netanyahu seems to be, at the moment, as not really interested in going towards any kind of ceasefire, but building on what he achieved and creating a new regional order.
My name is Sami Hermez. I'm associate professor at Northwestern University in Qatar, and I'm an anthropologist.
So, Sami, it has been a deadly couple of weeks in Lebanon. Hezbollah's leader, Hassan Nasrallah, was killed on Friday, but more than 1,000 people have been killed and more than 6,000 wounded by Israeli strikes over the past few weeks, with the bombardment continuing on densely populated civilian areas. You are based in Doha, but you are Lebanese. So what is it like to watch this devastation from afar? And how's your family doing?
My family is fine. They're, for now, not in the immediate vicinity of things. So thankfully for that. And it feels like one wants to be there to take the first plane back so that, you can do something. In 2006, when Israel attacked, I was actually not there, but I didn't have kids, and I went back in the midst of it and to do relief work. They're talking about now like upwards of 1 million refugees or something like that, internally displaced. Being in Doha, going on with your life, it's a bit discombobulating, I guess.
Yeah. So I want to go back to your reaction and the reactions we saw really in several places in the world after Friday's killing. Hassan Nasrallah was this figure that seemed to loom larger than life, whether people saw him as a leader or they saw him as an arch enemy. So I'm going to share a few of the responses U.S. President Joe Biden called his killing a, quote, measure of justice for a, quote, reign of terror. In the Middle East, some objected to Hezbollah's support for Bashar al-Assad in Syria's civil war. But he was also loved by many people. And we've seen images of people crying and wailing and really distraught in Lebanon following the news that he was killed. You have seen Nasrallah speak in Lebanon. How would you describe him and the way that he connected with his followers?
It's been a tough few days for a number of reasons, right? I feel like to lose such a huge kind of larger than life character, I would say, is a big deal. I think for me, the way I would characterize him first and foremost is human. And I think people forget that. Human also in the sense that, he connected with people. When he spoke, he was kind of close to you. It's just in the way he used language.
The Lebanese front will not stop before the aggression on Gaza stops. We have been saying this for 11 months now. It might sound repetitive now. But these words come after these two big blows, after all these martyrs, all these wounds, all this pain. I say clearly, whatever the sacrifices, whatever the consequences, whatever the possibilities, whatever the horizon to which the region heads.
He was also, I think, a patient man. He was restrained. And I think someone who extended his hand to his enemies, or maybe not won't call them his enemies, but his opposition in Lebanon. And I feel like what worries me is that in his absence, there won't be that same restraint or that same patience with opposition. In Lebanon, there are a lot of people who opposed him. And what worries me is that with him gone, people might see this as a moment of weakness for Hezbollah. And so they might want to kind of pounce, right? In a sort of vultures kind of jumping at someone who appears weak, at least. But what's missing is that kind of person who's a little bit more three-dimensional, right?
Yeah. So you've talked to me, I feel, about two of those dimensions. There was massive criticism for him, though. Let's talk about that dimension, the view of him from the U.S., from Israel, from certain segments of Syrian society who were upset about Hezbollah's role in their war.
The West is going to call him a terrorist, and the Israelis are going to call him a terrorist. And those are obvious, he was fighting them, and there's the other dynamic of sort of within the Arab sphere. Their decision to enter Syria, I never thought that it was the right move. But I think we also have to check ourselves if we are celebrating with Israelis, then there's something wrong with our politics, right? So whether it's the Syrian opposition, not all of them, but there are some who were celebrating, and I think that there's something wrong with those politics when you're celebrating alongside the Israelis. That the Assad regime is authoritarian, violent regime that that's indefensible. There are Lebanese as well, who may celebrate this, although they wouldn't do it, I think, publicly right now. I think for me, one of the problems in Lebanon is that it's not enough to say, oh, we are united or we need to be united, but united against what? And this is not the most popular view sometimes, but I think I want people to be united against the settler colonial regime. I want people to be united against oppression, against apartheid, against someone who's, conducting land theft and genocide.
You mentioned what comes next after Nasrallah is a question mark. And so I think that's a question many people are asking. Naeem Qassem, the group's deputy secretary general, gave a televised speech on Monday in which he said that Hezbollah will name a new leader at the earliest opportunity, and our fighters are prepared for anything, including a ground incursion. What do you think happens next when it comes to the leadership of Hezbollah? Do you get someone who is more measured? Do you get someone who is just as charismatic? Or do you get someone who's an even stronger hardliner?
I have to say, this really is a kind of, does feel like a 1967 moment in some ways to those of us who are just kind of observers. You know, and around that time, Jamal Abdel Nasser, who was the president of Egypt, sort of galvanized the Arab world. And there was a sense that one was on the rise and that you could kind of end this Israeli occupation of historic Palestine. And the Israelis preemptively attacked Egypt and Syria and Jordan and occupied in 6 days the West Bank and Gaza and the Golan Heights and the Sinai, and in 6 days. And Arabs were left kind of feeling confused, right? And what's going on? And I think there's this similar sort of sense of Hezbollah is this really powerful group, this resistance, and then in 10 days, 2 weeks, there's attack after attack and infiltration after infiltration and assassination after assassination.
The political leader of Hamas, Ismail Haniyeh, has been killed in Iran.
We are getting confirmation from Hezbollah that top military commander, Ibrahim Akil, has indeed been killed by Israel in that attack.
The Israeli military says it has confirmed that it has killed Marwan Issa, the deputy military commander of Hamas.
It still feels, for someone like myself who's not a military strategist, like that kind of moment of confusion and paralysis, and something came crashing down, and especially with Nasrallah, right? But I think going back to Naeem Qassem's point is that the military structure is still intact and so on. And I would maybe just pose a kind of observation is that since Nasrallah's assassination, it's been 3 days now, Hezbollah has been behaving and responding in the same kind of tradition that Nasrallah had put forth before his assassination. They're still restrained. They're still haven't escalated, which means that there's still a structure of command, and people are not attacking or going rogue. And so I wonder if that's an indication of a structure. And ultimately, it is a guerrilla movement. It's not a traditional military. And so you would expect a guerrilla movement that they would be a little bit more, they would be less hierarchical, right? That they would operate differently. But it's, anyone's guess if they will continue in the same sort of philosophy that they have. My guess is that they will, because it's not a person's philosophy. It's a philosophy from the bottom up of a party and how they kind of teach their members from their youth. So that would be my guess, that it's not going to be like an all, let's lash out or let's go.
So how will Nasrallah's killing shape future generations of Hezbollah? That's after the break. Hi. Before we continue, we really want to know more about you and how you feel about our podcasts. So we'd love for you to take a survey. It's brief and anonymous. Stay tuned to the end of this episode to find out how you can have your say. So Sami, with so many assassinations of top leadership, including Nasrallah now, a new, younger generation will almost inevitably have to rise up within its ranks. What has shaped that generation?
I think what's shaped that generation is this last year of genocide. I think what's shaped that generation is the same thing that's shaped the global youth generation, which I think is interesting. I think because this moment has radicalized a lot of people globally on, what is Zionism? What are the the gatekeepers of that discourse. They've all crumbled. And I think that's why you see Zionism lashing out, whether that's in US college campuses or lashing out on Gaza and now Lebanon in this kind of super vicious way. And I think the parallel of viciousness in the US and in Gaza, of course, it's day and night, but there's a kind of similar logic, I think, at play. And that logic is a hegemony has been broken and a new world is trying to be built. And I think, the Hezbollah members are shaped by very similar things to what we're all shaped by. Again, they're very much, human and listening to the news like we are, and right, so shaped in similar ways.
Yeah, interesting. Neither Hezbollah nor anyone else has any idea where this is headed next. With no end in sight and no seeming intervention coming from the United States or other major players in the region, what does this mean for Israel's endgame?
I think Israel is sort of stuck in a way, in the sense that it's on a killing spree, and it thinks that by destroying lives and land and infrastructure that it can somehow win. These are tactical gains, but not strategic ones. And this has always been Israel. This has always been Zionism. It began with ethnic cleansing and it continued to ethnically cleanse. And what was happening before October 7 was a kind of what we call a slow genocide. Taking a plot of land here, starting a new settlement there, opening an outpost here, strangling Gaza. So this was a slow process, and your sort of average liberal Zionist was living with that and fine with that. And what October 7 exposed was that this is philosophically, ideologically genocidal. And so the end game is, Israel's end game is, I think, more of this destruction. And I think our end game is not just to prevent the furthering of this genocide, but I think trying to build a different world. And I think it's incumbent on us to imagine the future we want to live in and build it in a way that offers an alternative to all peoples in this land. And so there is competing visions here. One is destructive, and unfortunately the other side doesn't have yet a vision for that liberation.
Yeah. Well, speaking of a vision, former Trump advisor Jared Kushner took to X to share his vision, saying that Israel will never get another chance to finish the job and completely dismantle the arsenal that has been aimed at them. So there's a vision that one side has of what these past few days of bombings will lead to, could lead to. Have you seen those comments? What did you make of them?
Yeah, I saw those comments, and it's really interesting. He talks about the Middle East as if it's for him. It's a playground for him. It's a playground for Western elites. That's the vision of the Middle East we need to build. That is one where Jared Kushner can feel safe in, and Jared Kushner can invest in. And unfortunately, elites in the Arab world and some of our Arab government leaders think the vision of a future is one where we build more and more skyscrapers, right? This kind of vision of modernity that we all see what it's doing to the world, to the earth, and to the environment, right? And so there's the Jared Kushners of the world want to eliminate entire societies, to build playgrounds, to build resorts, and to build sustainable cities, quote unquote, right? And on the bones of people. And so And I think, part of this is we need to reject what that vision and that notion of development as, forget Palestinians, forget Lebanese, think of the earth itself, right? That development is not good for you sitting in the US, as it is not good for me, right?
Well, Sami, final question. You have 2 children. We've heard them a couple of times during this interview. You've given your analysis for our audience of what has been playing out and what could happen. How are you analyzing this to them? How are you helping them make sense of what's happened in Lebanon?
Yeah, it's really tough. I think they're at an age where they understand, but then they don't. It's my daughter said, "Are we not going to be able to go back to Lebanon in the wintertime?" And I thought, there are bigger issues right now than us not being able to go back. My son's, for his birthday, he wanted donuts. And I said, "From where?" And he said, "Well, if Dunkin' Donuts doesn't support Israel, then we can get from Dunkin' Donuts." And so he had me Google Dunkin' Donuts to see. And my son is 8 years old at the moment. I hope that understanding of his role in the global economics is something he will not forget and he'll carry with him. My kids, when they say that they're from Palestine because Palestine and Lebanon were one once upon a time. And so also understanding that what happens in Palestine is happening to them. And it's not just when things came to Lebanon that it's happening to them, but that that their people were under the gun when the bombs were falling in Gaza, and not just when the bombs were falling in Beirut.
And that's The Take. At Al Jazeera Podcast, we want to hear from listeners like you. So if you have a few minutes, go to aljazeera.com/survey and tell us about yourself. From things like how you listen to us, to what kinds of shows you want to listen to, or topics you'd like us to cover. Again, that's aljazeera.com/survey.